Hello and welcome, it's Chris from Christopher Holt Training and welcome to this tutorial where we're going to be talking about hip strength and core stability, and we're going to be using a technique called rooting, which is essentially fixing your feet to the floor. But before we get into that, I just want to quickly mention, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave any comments below if you found this information useful or if you've learned something. It would be great to hear any questions that you might have. Alternatively, click one of the links in the description. You can go through to my Facebook page, like there, or you can find out more about my core strength and stability online training program. So, coming back to the tutorial for this time, we are talking about rooting. Now, what is rooting and why do we do it? Well, rooting is essentially, it's fixing our feet to the floor. So we are essentially rooted to the floor. What's it doing? Well, it's helping activate all the muscles of the lower limb. So we're activating muscles of the feet, the lower leg, and up into the hip. What's that doing? Well, that's helping us build hip strength, which is going to support our core strength and our spine stability. So we've got many reasons to start doing it, but there are a lot of reasons why people don't do it. And I'll explain about some of those, or talk about some of those in the tutorial that we're about to go into. So hopefully you're ready to go. There's going to be a couple of exercises that we're going to use to help demonstrate it. You can follow along if you have the means to do so, and then you can transfer that into exercises that you do at the gym or at home or wherever you may be. In part one, I'm just going to take you through some teaching points on how we root our feet to the floor, how we grip the floor with our toes. So first of all, you can see that I'm in my socks here. You can do it barefoot, you can do it in socks, or sort of the least best option is you can do it in trainers. The main reason with trainers is you've got the toes that come, or the toe of the shoe sort of lips up, so the front of the shoe isn't gripping the floor. So you're actually gripping onto your trainer, which is gripping the floor. So it can have an effect, but it's not as effective. So what we're going to do is we're first of all going to lift our toes from the floor. After we've lifted the toes, we then want to spread them nice and wide. So you want to push your big toe and your little toe as far apart from each other, and all of the three middle toes as well. Push them as far as you can. Then you reach forward and you grip and you sort of pull onto the floor. So what you should be able to feel are the muscles under your feet starting to engage. So what we're starting to do now is we would then grip onto the floor, and the next thing is to turn the knees out. But we're not lifting the ball of the foot off the floor. We still want to have that gripped onto the floor, and then the knees go out. So you might find that your toes or your feet slightly turn on the floor. That's absolutely fine. What that is doing is, first of all, with the gripping of the toes, that's engaging the feet and the ankles and stimulating those. It's also getting a little bit of the lower leg as well. What we then do is then turn the knees out. This is the part that then activates the hip muscles. So I mentioned that before. We're getting all of the muscles of the leg engaged, and we are now rooting ourselves to the floor. So that is how we grip onto the floor. And what we then do is we then use exercise to then challenge that base. So we're then gripping on and using those muscles more effectively, which is what I'm going to do in part two. But just before we go into part two, I'll just quickly go through that again so we can grip the floor and root our body into the floor. So first of all, it's lifting the toes. Then it's spreading the toes. Then you reach forward and pull back as if to grip and clamp onto the floor. That will engage muscles at the bottom of the foot. Slight bend of the knee, push the knees out. That will then engage the hip muscles. So it's a bit like the heels coming inward and the toes going outward, but as you can see, my feet are parallel. What you might find, if you have flatter feet, you might find the arch starts to lift about now when you sort of turn the knees out. So we've got toes gripped on, knees out. We are now ready to lift a weight, which we're going to do next. Now we're going to take it a step further on in part two, and we're going to talk about using weights. Now, I've got a kettlebell there. You can use dumbbells and barbells and things like that, so you can use it for squatting. You can use it for a deadlifting and any sort of standing exercises, but I'm just going to use it for 2. I'm going to use a Romanian deadlift, and I'm going to use another kettlebell exercise, which is I'm going to pass the weight around my body. Now, what these exercises are doing, the Romanian deadlift is that sort of forward and backwards motion. So that's going to be challenging me in that way. The one where I move the kettlebell around my body, that's going to be challenging me, obviously, laterally, forwards, and diagonally. So we're going to be, in a sense, this weight wants to pull me out of that position, but this rooting is going to help me stay in that position. So where we are using upper body, core to move the weight, we're using the legs to fix us in position. Now again, we have to get the right weight for this, because if we don't get the right weight, then it's not going to have that effect. But if we've got a heavy weight that is pulling us around, then it's going to have that much more effect. So you can start to see now that this rooting exercise is developing our core strength and our upper body strength, because it's helping us root ourselves to the floor so we can lift that much more weight. So what we do exactly the same. If I stay front on, in fact, we do our lifting of the toes, spreading of the toes, grip the floor, and then turn the knees out. As we flex down, we turn the knees out, we hold strong, we keep the kettlebell close, and then we come back up. We come down, and we come up. Do a couple from the side. So again, lift the toes, spread the toes, grip the floor, turn the knees out, down we come. So all the time, I'm connected to the floor, the weight's not moving me around. So that's a nice simple exercise to get you started, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to go too heavy too soon and be focused on just trying to hold on to the weight. What you want to be able to do is make sure you can get the feet gripped on and the legs engaged and the hips engaged. Once you've got that, start with a light weight and just get the movement and just get used to using the feet to root yourself to the floor. So don't worry too much about the weight on the upper body for now, because as you get used to that and you get to a heavier weight, you'll still be able to control what the feet and the hips are doing. Because what I find with a lot of people is they'll see an exercise like this and they'll think, oh, I should do that. They'll go and use the same weights, but because the weights are so heavy, they can't focus on what their feet and their hips are doing and their knees are doing, because they're trying to hold on to the weight. So we've got to, in a sense, train the brain to grip onto the floor, and then once we've got big heavy weight in our hands, we can then manage that through the light weight into the heavy weight. So what we'll do now is we'll do one that's slightly different, and we'll start moving the kettlebell around. So we do exactly the same. We lift the weight up, but this time, because I'm moving the weight around, it wants to pull me around. So it wants to pull me this way and that way, and I've got to resist that. And having the feet rooted to the floor helps that. And it keeps me in a fixed position. All my muscles are engaged, and then my upper body doesn't want to move. But that's what's making the muscles work. It's that sort of anti-movement, because I'm trying to prevent movement and the kettlebell is trying to make me move. That's where the strength is coming from. So it's a very different type of strength, but it's a very effective strength. And so the rooting is where all that starts, because if I just go with a heavy weight and a flat foot, you'll find there's a bit more movement because I'm not as fixed to the floor. And at some point, this is very extreme, this type of thing could start happening, which is what we don't want. We could then go off balance, we could lose our footing, so on and so forth. So that is how we root to the floor. That's a couple of exercises as an example, but those are the reasons why we use it, and that is how we use it in order to develop core strength on the top of hip strength. To summarize those final 2 parts, what we are doing or how we are doing it, first of all, lift the toes, spread the toes, put the toes down on the floor and grip the floor. So clamp onto the floor, turn the knees out. That gets us in position, that activates the hip muscles, which supports what we're doing up here. Then any exercises where we are in a fixed position on the floor, i.e. the 2 that I used, Romanian deadlift and the round the world exercise where I'm moving the weight or moving the kettlebell around my body, and we want to be able to sort of, it's more of an anti-movement type of exercise. So anything like that is really good for when we use rooting, squats, deadlifts, things like that. If we have to move our feet, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But those are the types of exercises that we would use it for. So hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully it's given you a better idea of how to root and also the reasons why we do it. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris and I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.